Right, we are live. It is episode number 4 of the Why Carbs Won't Make You Fat podcast. I'm here with Josh. We're actually in person today, so he's waving. He's joined me over at place I work, Valkyrie HQ, and I think just terrified him slightly by the people who are training outside. We've got Adam Bishop outside, who's one of the world's strongest men. He's doing some prep bits. We won't tell you what he's doing because I'm sure he wants to keep that up his sleeve if any of his
competitors
are listening, which they probably aren't, but yeah. So how's things, Josh?
Very well. Yeah. Busy day at work. Had a few classes and then some nutrition consultations, and now I'm here.
Nice.
Early start and then an early finish, which is quite nice.
Yeah, nice.
Yourself?
Yeah, good. Yeah, I had last in-person PT client for the year. I've got class tomorrow, run, and then I've got week off, Christmas, back into it, New Year. So all gravy. How are you finding the nutrition clients? They getting on well?
It's more a case of just getting them to eat.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
they're in that bracket. Okay.
Some of them, they just don't find the time to eat or remember to eat because they've either got a stressful job or they're in a high functioning position or they've got family commitments and then they just get distracted or whatever it is. But trying to get them into the mind of it being not a non-negotiable thing that you have to have breakfast and lunch and dinner, kind of
put some fuel in that tank.
Put some fuel in that tank, because there are some that are making progress in their sessions, whether it's the strength or the cardio sessions, but it's not as hugely noticeable as it could be. If they fuel correctly before and after, then week on week they'd gradually see progressions in the gym and they'll be able to lift more and do more reps and stuff like that. But that just comes down to the education side of things.
No, but like I said, they need to sort of feel that for themselves a bit as well.
Absolutely.
I think that is actually going to be one of the subjects today. So just to summarize what we're talking about, so you can decide whether you want to carry on listening. We're going to talk a little bit about fueling your workouts. Going to talk a little bit about what the best exercise for fat loss is, and question from Athlete Movement, where I help out with the nutrition. A lot of the members there are asking or setting goals for the new year, and one of their common goals is they want to stop snacking. So going to do a little bit talking about that. But before any of that, it's Christmas time, so let's have a little bit of fun. And I want to talk about what is your ideal Christmas dinner? Now, I'm going to let Josh start because I've got a feeling his is going to be absolutely epic. So here we go, mate. Over to you.
Well, this year's kind of forming into quite a good one, but having seen quite a few Instagram recipes, there's a few things I want to try out. One of which is like this thing called a Dutch baby, which is kind of a cross.
That's absolutely terrifying.
I know, but it's no babies are involved. But it's kind of a cross between a Yorkshire pudding and a pancake.
Oh, wow.
So you use like an oven-proof pan or a skillet, and you make a pancake batter, melt a load of butter into it, throw the batter in along with parsley, dill, and one other green herb that escapes my memory, salt, pepper, and then grated parmesan. Put that in an oven and then let that puff up.
Wow.
And then you can put whatever meat or any size you want. So we're probably going to do smoked salmon with like a dill cream sauce on top, and then eat that, maybe some scrambled eggs on the side. So that'll be meal number 1 probably. And then, seeing as my dad is not particularly fond of anything coming out of the sea, I'll make an option for him, which would be ricotta and blueberry pancakes with some lemon in there. So quite light and fluffy things, but decadent at the same time, which is nice. Then the actual Christmas meal itself, we're doing roast duck this year.
Nice.
And then roast potatoes cooked in either goose fat or beef dripping, I think, just to get that nice crispy texture. Nut roast, which we kind of use for stuffing, and again, and then green veggies, carrots, parsnips, gravy, bread sauce, and all that sort of stuff. And then we've got 2 options for dessert, which I don't think we'll get through in the time afterwards. But it's chocolate brioche, bread and butter pudding, and then cheesecake, which the content of which escapes me for the time being. But it's going to be quite a big day of gorging, and the following days afterwards. But yeah, that's kind of a rough blueprint.
Nice. I think if any of our listeners or viewers are in the Guildford area, Josh's family do one of the cake stalls on the Guildford
Mhm.
Market, and
Got a shop in Milford
wow,
as well.
yeah, wow, and a shop in Milford, yeah. So the cake game is going to be next level, I think, at your Christmas dinner.
Yeah.
I guess I asked
What about
things
you?
off to the in-laws. So mother-in-law's good cook. She loves hosting. It's a big family tradition. So
Mhm.
food's going to be pucker.
Yeah.
I think we're having beef and turkey, I think is on the
Nice.
menu. I don't know a lot about it. I've sort of not really paid a lot of attention to the planning. My bad. But I guess if I was doing it, I would go. Oh, it's a big. I would probably do two meats because I basically wouldn't be able to decide. So we'd have to invite a bunch of people around. But I would like, just for the theatre of it, rib of beef,
Oh yeah.
and then just cook that really nice. I've got a meat thermometer,
Oh yeah.
game changing in terms of like cooking. They're so good. So I do that, and I've never had one, but I know I would love it, like a proper Italian porchetta.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pork belly, right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
Porchetta? Yeah. So yeah, pork belly, sort of rolled joint. They just look insane.
They do.
I love Italian food. I've always wanted to have one and just never done it yet. So that would be me. Puddings wise, keep it quite straightforward. I love a good Christmas pudding. Just anything like festive that you're never going to eat it the rest of the year. So I figure just go all in on that. So that would be me. And I'm pretty much done with the year in terms of work. So I'm just looking forward to sitting on my ass for a good week and just chilling.
Yeah.
Cool. Right. So on that note, I guess one thing to say around Christmas, we've just talked about all that food.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, sure, there's protein and carbs in that. There's plenty of fat, but Christmas is all about enjoying yourself. It's only for like a week. Just crack on, crack on.
It's only one time of the year. It's not the whole year.
Yeah, you'll miss it if you miss out, unless you've got a real specific goal. If it's your thing, you want to be dialed in, go for it, but don't feel you have to by any stretch of the imagination. So on that note, I think let's go for the next topic of fueling your workouts. And Josh, you alluded to it a little bit. I think we'll talk about what's optimal, but what I want you guys to take away from it is what's practical. And I've got on my notes here, like basically you can't work out hard on an empty tank, which is basically what you're trying to instill into your clients when you're trying to get them to eat. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's well, from an optimal point of view, ideally you want to have a good carb source and then some protein in there. But depending on the type of training you're going to be doing and the time frame of when you're going to be training, you might not want to have a big meal in your stomach just to
basically you don't want it to bounce. But
don't want it to bounce, exactly. And you just feel
training
for the entirety of your workout. And just say if you're doing strength stuff and you're going heavy and you're wearing a belt, that makes it very uncomfortable. And I've done that a couple of times myself. So ideally, if you have access to it, if you train like midday or afternoonish, something like that, and you can time your lunch around it at about an hour or hour and a half before, then ideal. Or you can have a bowl of porridge with some banana and maybe a side of scrambled eggs or something like that. I remember days of like doing CrossFit sessions, which would end up being quite lengthy. So I'd have a fairly big bowl of oats in the morning and then some bacon and some scrambled eggs, and that would be about an hour and a half, something like that, before the actual session itself, and some caffeine too.
Good shout. We'll talk about that in a moment.
Yeah, and creatine, but pre-workout stuff I never really dabbled in much, but that also is useful from because depending on the ingredients and the dosing of it, might have some beta-alanine in it, which is a good lactic buffer.
Yep.
And L-citrulline for vasodilation and getting more oxygenated blood to the muscles when you're training and stuff like that. But simplicity, I'd say getting a good carb source beforehand, some protein, and preferably things that can digest well and easily, and that should see you right.
Yeah, and that's a big point. Things that digest well and easily for you as well. So you might have to play around to see basically what works better for you. To take a practical steer on it, I think there's a couple of I was talking to my friend who lives in Canada the other day. Actually, we're catching up just before Christmas. He's got 3 kids. They're all under 5, and his 5-year-old kid is just starting out in jiu-jitsu, and he's really good at it, which doesn't surprise me given his mum's and his dad's sporting pedigree.
Yeah.
And he was saying, no, it's kind of cool because he hangs around like the dojo with all the other parents. And I think because it's quite new, they haven't associated the kid with the parent. So everyone's saying how good his son is at jiu-jitsu, not knowing that he's his dad, which he's like, that's quite cool actually, because they're not sort of just telling me that is actually what they think. But he's now at the age where he's sort of like really, really into it and wants to be really good at it, which is awesome. And he was like, I'm trying to kind of get him to do like the holistic thing with his, so it's not just about the fitness thing.
The physical side.
You've got to fuel yourself, got to recover well. So he uses this great analogy, and like recovery is a big part of being able to go into a session well. So sleep, you've got to have enough fuel in there. It's pointless training, hammering away at this thing that's really hard and getting 50% of the result. If you're putting 100% of effort in and only getting 50% out because you're eating badly, you're wasting your time, basically. You're spinning your wheels and it's going to suck. So to avoid that, he's like using this analogy with his kids. So he talks about, you know, we've got the proteins, the carbs and the fats, different elements of the food. And he's like, they're basically your building materials. He said, so you've got this concept of we eat well, and that's our building materials. We go and train. And training is like we've basically got the blueprints out for the house we're building and we've laid them out. So we've got all our materials, that's our food. We've got our blueprint, that's our actually going and doing the jiu-jitsu, going and doing the running, going and lifting the weights. So nothing happens until we rest, aka sleep, because he's trying to get him to go to bed earlier. And then it's when we sleep, all of the materials are picked up by the work, like the metaphorical workers, and they follow the plan, which is the strength training. And that's when muscle repair happens. That's when fitness improves. That's when the result you're after happens. Right. So a little bit of a technical fail there. You might see a cut or a edit in the video. That's basic because I thought we were on mute and we weren't. But we're back. We're back. So as I was saying, that is when the magic happens. A lot of people miss the point that training is really important, but if you just keep on training, you'll not maximize your gains, if you like, because you never give yourself a chance to repair and grow. So rest is probably more important. You get bigger, stronger, fitter when you rest, not when you are training. You have to give it the right fuel. Now, if your goal is fat loss, you might think, oh, well, I'll just shortcut the food a bit, eat as little as I can, and just push through training as best I can. But ultimately, you end up not working very hard, which ultimately then means it takes longer to get to your goal than it would do if you had a more moderate approach, fueled yourself a little. Because if you get 20 minutes into a 45-minute workout and you're crashing, then your energy output isn't as high, so you don't burn as many calories in that workout. Not that's the primary goal of working out. But then afterwards, you're more tired and sore and stiff, and then the next training session isn't as good. You're not getting as strong as you could be doing, and it compounds and compounds and compounds. So don't fear fueling yourself properly. Explosive exercise, which is basically most of the stuff we do that is good for us, is fueled from carbohydrate. Your body can use proteins and fats to fuel you if it needs to, but that's not its preferred way of doing it. So if you're going to prioritize anything, prioritize having something carby before you work out. Lots of people think protein gives you energy. As I've just explained, that's not quite true. You can get energy from it, but protein's role is to preserve muscle and build it. And a lot of people would say, I say, maybe I should have protein before. When should I have it? Before or after working out? As I've said, prioritize carbohydrates. That's going to give you your fuel. Get your protein in when you can, because there's actually, and I didn't really appreciate this concept till recently when I read it in Alan Aragon's book, of there is a ideal window of protein intake, which is actually either side of your workout, which makes a lot of sense when you think about it. So you have the protein, it's in your bloodstream, it just needs to be available. So as long as the protein's there, you could have it slightly before your workout, and afterwards you still get the benefit, or you could have it after your workout and you still get the benefit. You don't need to down a protein shake as soon as you drop the barbell. Your muscles aren't going to fall off. I use the analogy of, for when you're building muscle or looking to preserve it, your strength training, as we all should be doing, you can treat the workout as the lock and the protein as the key. You have to do the workout. You also have to have the protein in your bloodstream. When those two come together, muscle grows and repairs. So if you don't manage to get any protein around your workout, all you're doing is delaying the process of repair until the next time you have it, which is why it's optimal to have protein either just before or just after you work out, so that the repair can happen instantly. If you don't have it, don't panic. It just means you're pressing pause for a little bit and you're putting a little bit of your progress maybe left on the table, but it's a small amount. The daily amount of calories, the daily amount of protein, carbohydrates and fats is always what matters the most. So keep it simple like that. So now I've stopped floundering because of the tech issues. Anything to add to that, Josh?
No, you pretty much covered everything. Yeah, like that last bit about if you don't get the protein, I think someone used to call it the window of gains.
Yes.
So like saying like an hour or 2 hours after, and if you don't, you're kind of screwed. And that was kind of can't remember who actually said it, but it was a marketing tool of probably selling supplements of some sort.
Protein shakes, probably.
Yeah.
I'm not nothing wrong with a protein shake, but they would like you to have that as many times in the day as possible because they sell more products.
Yeah. But that kind of being a bit of a fallacy. Like ideally 45 minutes to an hour afterwards, but it's not huge. It's just overall accumulation of protein throughout the day, and you should be fine.
Yeah. Rule of thumb: it's always the total daily amount that matters in anything: calories, water, protein, carbs, fats, all of that stuff. Josh talked a little bit about supplementation. We won't go too deeply into that because the things we talked about in terms of sleep and recovery and fueling yourself properly are the bigger rocks to move.
Yeah.
Those other things are nice to have, but I'll use the phrase, you need to earn the right to use the fancy tools first by doing the basics well. A massive tangent, but like even like pro level athletes who do take performance enhancing substances, because that's either legal in their competition or because they do, they're getting everything right before they do that. It's not a cheat code. It's a little extra boost. It's a trump card to play to help you get a little bit more performance. If your sleep's terrible, if you're eating terribly, you'll get a benefit from the drug, but it's not as big as it could be if you're doing everything optimally first. So earn the right first. With that in mind, let's talk a little bit about exercise. Common question: what's the best exercise for fat loss? I've alluded to it a little bit already. I've got my take on it. Do you want to do your take first, or should I do my take?
It's not necessarily my take. It's kind of the take of other people that I've listened to.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, same.
I kind of get that, and it's like there isn't one. It's more calorie deficit is the most effective
100%
form of weight loss, or exercise, if you want to call it, or just call it a tool rather than anything else. It's just a tool for helping weight loss. And then if you're doing a form of strength training or you're looking to build muscle and things like that, just because of the metabolic need from the muscle on the rest of the body, that will kind of draw any stored energy that you already have to fuel those muscles that you're building. And so weight loss will happen as a result of that, basically.
Yeah. So, I mean, and where people sometimes like to focus their attention on is creating that calorie deficit through activity. And it's not impossible to do that. I find it easier because I spend good 12 hours most days on my feet, training people, moving weights around, instructing classes. I'm very active and I train hard outside of that. Professional athletes wouldn't find it a problem. Endurance competitors, people do lots of swimming, children all find it quite easy to burn calories through exercise. When you get up at 7 a.m., get the kids off to school, you're in the office for 9, you have a 5-minute lunch break, you then drive to school to pick up the kids, take them to after school clubs, and your step count is 1,000 to 2,000 per day, then it's very hard to create a calorie deficit through exercise because you're going to be absolutely shattered by doing that additional amount of exercise on top of that. I'm not saying it's impossible. So the more efficient way tends to come from your diet. That's the context around that.
Mhm.
Alluded to it a little bit, and yeah, definitely exercise in a way that you enjoy, because exercise is arguably the best thing that you can do for your health above nutrition.
Mhm.
Most healthy, like blue zone countries, the biggest component of that health aspect is lifestyle and being active,
Mhm.
then food. And the only thing I would say is that cardiovascular exercise being is great for your health, great for your heart.
Mhm.
But healthy aging isn't just about heart health. It's about being independent in your old age, having good bone density, coordination, and being able to get up and down off the loo by
Mhm.
yourself without the help of anyone else, which is a very, very, very real thing as you
Mhm.
get older. By doing a little bit of strength training, not weight training. You could do weights if you want to. That's a form of strength training. You can do body weight if you want to. You can go cycling, where we try and work our upper body as well and balance that. You can do yoga.
Mhm.
That improves our bone density. That helps us to preserve muscle, because we lose a little bit of muscle as we get older. That offsets a lot of the disbenefits of aging. So if you can start to strength train in a way that you enjoy, keeping that muscle mass on your body then goes on to support your metabolism by a small amount. It's a very, very small amount. We're talking maybe like you get to burn an extra 50 calories a day. It's not huge,
Mhm.
but the type of person that then gets involved in strength training, moves around a bunch,
Yeah.
just tends to be healthier
Mhm.
through their whole lifestyle.
It's one of the things that stood out to me the most of that one of my first coach said was the things that kind of test you for or should test you for as you age are overall muscle mass, leg strength, cardiovascular health, and your grip strength.
Yeah.
And then getting into the more interested in this topic, Peter Attia
Yeah, I love Peter Attia.
is big on the longevity thing, and he has people in their 50s, 60s upwards, training them or studying them and finding the best ways for them to have a good quality of life. And more like when my mum hates exercise, and
Yeah.
but she eats fairly well, and she's on her feet all the time baking.
Mm.
But she did have some back problems a little while ago, and then she went to a physio. And she basically said, "I don't want to be reliant on others when I'm in my 70s or older," and she's
Yeah.
getting close to that now. And so it worked out an exercise regime that she can do simply, and then I can give her some extra exercises here and there to add into that repertoire,
Nice.
just to not make sure it's stale and that she's still challenging herself. And it works. And
Yeah.
all those things that you just mentioned, and particularly with the blue zone, like people in the east, they're like I can't remember if it was Japan having all their elders doing Tai Chi in the park or
Yeah, that's
something
it.
like
And then a
that.
big community
Big
thing.
community
Yeah.
thing as well. So, and that kind of ties into one of the things that Huberman talks about is the community aspects. Because as people age, their social groups obviously get smaller, whether people move away or
Yeah.
unfortunately they pass away.
Yeah.
But having that connection or a good friend group is hugely important for just overall well-being.
Yeah.
And we're in a very fractured, well, not fr well, fracture's probably not the right word, or it could be, of socializing via tablets or
Yeah,
phones and
exactly.
things
There's not
like
a lot of
that.
in-person community.
Yeah, so
It's
rather than communicating through a screen, communicating face to face is good for your physical and mental well-being as well.
yeah. And that if you don't want to exercise at all, then the best thing you can do for your health is try and go walking, even if
Mm.
it's 5 to 10 minutes a day. Just meet yourself where you're at. If you want to burn calories through exercise, it takes longer, but go walking.
Mhm.
Burns, like people find this quite controversial, but it burns almost the same amount of calories as running the same distance, and it doesn't hurt, and you
Mm.
don't need a lot of fitness to go walking compared to running. Less
Mm.
injury risk, less barriers to going walking. It does take longer
Mm.
to walk that distance than it does to run it, but
Mm.
that is practically the only difference in terms of calorie burn. So if you're going to go burn some calories by something, try and do it by walking, because it's easier to recover from and you won't be that hungry afterwards.
Mm.
Whereas compared to fitness class, Everyone's different, but often it ramps up your appetite. So again, if you're just relying on your appetite and activity, that's probably going to be tough to get yourself into a calorie deficit.
Also, rucking's become very popular. So, like having a
weighted
vest or a weighted
yeah,
backpack,
nice, yeah,
going on a walk.
And a good, like actually a good way to build bone density, because
Yeah.
then you're doing an exercise with some extra load that's manageable for you.
Yeah.
Good. Cool. Nice. Right. Moving swiftly on, we will talk about question of snacking. So maybe you've identified snacking as being a little bit of a barrier to your current goals. Snacking can be helpful. It can be helpful if you've got a performance goal. If you need to eat a lot of fuel, it can help to break it down a little bit. It can help you to make better decisions in the moment, because we don't make great decisions when we're hungry. Really, really handy for small children. Small children do need to snack all of the time because they run around like maniacs and they've got tiny stomachs, so they need to eat a lot of small meals. When you're an adult, you don't need to do that because you haven't got a tiny stomach anymore and you're not running around like a maniac most of the time. So one thing with snacking is, and we talked about it last week a little bit about sort of mindset. The first point I want to mention is environment. It's going to be really hard for you to stop snacking if all you can see is the snack, because it's on the coffee table, out on the worktop. The cupboards are jam-packed. That's the first thing you see when you open the fridge or the cupboard. One of the simplest steps you can take is to hack your environment, if you want to use hack as a term, which I don't particularly like. I don't know where that came from, but like if you want to hack your environment, then put the stuff away where you can't see it, because that's possibly easier for you than just not buying it in the first place, although that is a strategy. When it's away, then you've got a natural break between, well, you don't see it, so you're less tempted. And then if you think about it, you have to get up and go find it to then eat it. And as we talked about last week with like being more conscious thought, the impulse is there to do it. It's then about, right, pause. What is this offering me? Am I hungry? So they use it. I picked this up from another coach, and I quite like it. I mean, it's used in alcoholism, which is quite an extreme example. But he said to me, "Oh, you've ever heard of the HALT acronym?" Which I which I hadn't. Have you heard of that?
Heard of this, no.
So it's where you ask yourself, "Am I hungry, angry, lonely, or tired?"
Right.
And obviously, like with substance abuse, that's a good way to like break that loop. And we're not talking substance abuse, but it still works. So, am I actually hungry? No. And if you don't know if you're actually hungry, would a piece of fruit do? Because if you are, it definitely would. If you're ravenously hungry, you're going to eat the piece of fruit. If you're not ravenously hungry and you're like, oh, I don't want the fruit, but I want the Mars bar, there's a clue there. You know, not that the Mars bar is bad, but fruit is healthier, more healthful.
Rather energy dense or nutrient dense.
Let's say what it is. Obviously, we know a piece of fruit is better if you're overwhelmed than a Mars bar, but you can eat both of them in moderation. Then it comes into more emotional. Am I angry? So a lot of times, especially in the evening, we might have had a long day at work. Life might be stressful. We sit down to chill in front of the telly or whatever we're doing, and there's this like and then a need for some sort of comfort. And food is very, very comforting. It's not a bad thing, it just is. But then asking yourself about your emotions in that place and trying to be a bit rational. And if the answer is yes, I'm angry, and you're not saying I can't have the snack, you're just asking yourself if that is the thing that's going to fix it, because that first bite of the snack is going to be incredible. Is it going to last and sort out the problem? Potentially not. Do I then need to go do some other sort of activity that is comforting and calming and soothing? Am I lonely? That can be like a bit of a boredom thing as well. Like, am I tired? Because if we're tired, we're often hungrier than we are if we're well rested. All of those things help sort of reset that mindset. If we wind it back one step further, often the need to constantly snack comes from eating tiny little meals that aren't very satisfying, thinking you're doing the right thing, keeping everything low calorie, can we get a bigger, more nourishing meal in at breakfast, lunch, and dinner? If you're skipping breakfast, then maybe that has a function for you in terms of time, but it has an impact on your hunger later in the day. Can we get something in for breakfast, even if it's a piece of fruit or a protein shake, just to kickstart the nourishment throughout the day?
Yeah.
Are you sleeping well? Are you stressed? Those things are going to be, for me, the biggest rocks to move first. And then you might even find the snacking takes care of itself. Anything else from there?
I'd say, like, with this sleep thing, obviously sleep's important, but there are times like you may get 5.5, 6 hours worth of sleep, and when ideally you'd get 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And that might be a way of rationalizing why you may have eaten poorly on that day afterwards, sure. But that or an excuse for it, or whatever you want to call it. But because if you still have the same mindset as if you had a full night's sleep and you're still sticking with whatever protocol you're following, then you can't really go far wrong. It's kind of harks back to a little bit what we were talking about last week with references to Jocko Willink's books and things. Discipline equals freedom. It's like, okay, you're underslept, busy with work, but I've still got this toolkit that I can draw from. Which for like recently me changing like working situations, I've gone from very flexible way of working to shift work and starting early in the morning. And that could give me a bit of wiggle room to go, oh fuck it, I'll do what I want. I might go off piste on this day. But I've made the effort of preparing food the night before and then getting that assembled into my lunchbox to take with me to work. So I've still got that thing regardless of how I'm feeling, because there's some shifts that I've done where my mind's been elsewhere. And not really, may have been a little bit lethargic or whatever it is. And you would have that pang for, I'd like something really sweet, or something from a fast food outlet or whatever it is. But like, no, I've got this cooler bag full of food I've already made.
Why wouldn't I eat that?
I've already got something in the staff fridge that I've already made. So I've set myself up for a win, even though I'm not feeling like I'm winning.
Yeah, I love that. I guess the other thing with sleep actually is it's not. Maybe you have got 1 hour's worth of 1 hour's sleep for the last month because you're a new parent. What is actually going to serve that tiredness better is trying to go for the piece of fruit and the glass of water, because it will nourish you more. The Mars bar, the chocolate biscuit, is your body's craving that because it's really energy dense, and it's like, I need energy because I'm flat. Rationalizing that, you're still going to get energy from the healthier snack, and then have a reason to do that, which is, I'm really tired, I need to nourish my body, and this is more nourishing. And like with anything, it's having a drive and a purpose behind it. If you've got no drive and purpose behind your goal, it's going to be hard to turn up and do that thing, whether it's fat loss, muscle gain, whatever it is. So if you've done all those things and you're still constantly snacking, are you eating enough? And what's the goal? Is the goal serving you? Then ask yourself what that snack is offering you as well. And if it's offering you, if it's going to be the best snack in the world and it offers you a bunch of comfort, and you always have popcorn with your significant other in front of Netflix, and that's your way to bond, do that. Then make it up elsewhere. Cool. Right. I think we'll wrap it there, unless you've got anything else to add to the pod today.
No, I can think of.
Okay, nice and short and sharp today. Just to say, we will not be recording next week because I'm having a week off, guaranteed. And then we will be back in the new year, and we'll be back with Nick. We're going to talk about lots of things to do with January, and we were going to talk about January diets not having to be about weight loss and being more about health, looking after yourself. And so I'm trying to buck that trend a little bit. So Until next time, Josh, where can people find you online?
Josh Weebout 90 on Instagram, so that's Josh, and then WIBAUT 90. And yeah, that's pretty much the best place.
Cool, awesome. So if you thanks for listening. If you like the podcast, leave us a little review, give us a like and a follow. You can find me, Tim, at Food Flexibility, and you can find the podcast on, well, you're listening to it, but if you want to recommend it to a friend, it's available on Apple and Spotify, and it's also on YouTube.
Yay.
So until next time, carbs won't make you fat, but calories might.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.